Joining us here in the studio, CBS News legal analyst Rikki Klieman and defense attorney Randy Zelin, here to discuss potential legal implications, specifically as it relates to the Bunny Ranch. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, Randy, first of all, there are a lot of questions, a lot of unanswered questions about exactly what happened at this Love Ranch. But one of the big questions that's out there is the ranch says that Mr. Odom took some cocaine before he arrived at the ranch, but he also took some herbal supplements which are sold at the ranch. What, if any, legal implications does this mean for Dennis Hof and the Love Ranch?
Well, you see a few things. First of all, you see the power of keep your mouth shut. And that's what God made lawyers for. Because what is Mr. Hof saying? First of all, he's admitting what he dare not deny, the herbal supplements, because that's a given. They're sold there. And he denied what he dare not admit, which is the cocaine came beforehand, because he sure as hell can't say that the cocaine was done on his premises, because that would expose him to huge civil and criminal exposure. The cocaine's in Mr. Odom's system, so he can't deny that. But, of course, that happened beforehand. But the issues that Mr. Hof is faced with are the fact that this took place on his premises. Anywhere from what was done there, these herbal supplements, they legal, illegal, what was in them, should he have known, did he have reason to know not to give them to a man of Lamar Odom's condition, drunk, stoned? Has he been checked out? Can he handle, how did he get 10 of them? The cocaine, the drinking, did they serve him when he was visibly intoxicated? I mean, we could go on and on and on because it's know or have reason to know. And then, man, you are on the hook, possibly criminally as well.
So it sounds like there is a legal fight that could happen. But do you think that Lamar Odom will take it that far? He has obviously been exposed in terms of what was going on, his room, what he had in his refrigerator, his behavior. Obviously, he wanted this to kind of be kept private. Now it's what everyone's talking about. Do you think that there is definitely legal pursuit that he will encounter, and if you will, when he gets out of the hospital, if everything continues to improve in terms of his situation?
It may not be up to him.
Right.
It's one thing if he wanted to bring some kind of an action, which I think Randy and I could easily say, probably not. But it's another thing that if something worse happened to him, and now it sounds like, thankfully, he seems to be in the clear. But if the worst case scenario happened, then you would, of course, have family members who might have a cause of action. But I think Randy and I agree here that ultimately it may be up to two entities. One is, what is the district attorney's office going to do in terms of its own investigation? And secondly, when you look at these herbal supplements, the FDA has been very strong in recent times about condemning herbal supplements in general, but condemning herbal Viagra in particular. Why? We don't know what's in it.
Correct.
And we don't know if it says what's in it, if it's really there.
Right.
And so one of the problems you have with herbal Viagra is, at least from as little as I know, but what doctors have said is that it acts the same way as a blood pressure enhancer. So if you have that plus cocaine and your blood pressure is going up, the idea that someone might have a stroke is certainly a possibility.
That or your head will explode.
Right. Randy, what about this sort of war of words between the Kardashians and Dennis Hof? The Kardashians saying that all media requests should go through them. Clearly, I don't know that Mr. Hof perhaps wants to be in the spotlight with regards to the liability that he may be facing, but certainly, you know, that old adage that, you know, all publicity is good publicity. So he as our reporter, Tom Waite, just said, told the Kardashians to go to hell.
Hey, scorpion and a frog. It's the old story. Scorpion's a scorpion. A scorpion will sting the frog, even if the frog is responsible for taking the scorpion across the water to prevent him from drowning. You have an immovable force and an irresistible object. Two entities that cannot breathe, cannot live without being in the spotlight. So they're going to get into it over who's going to control what's going on. And remember, they both come at it from very, very different perspectives, though the end game is still the same. It's all about the publicity. How about nobody speak about anything other the miracle of the human body, the miracle of modern medicine that we're talking about literally this man's eulogy. Who's going to give his eulogy? And now he's speaking and the whole hey baby and going back to sleep. You can't make this up.
Let's play some of that sound actually of the Kardashians, or is it of Dennis Hoff talking? Let's play the sound of Dennis Hoff talking about this war of words that he's been having with the Kardashians.
Khloe Kardashian's publicist called me and asked me if I was going to do any media. I told her some of the outlets that were interested, and she says, well, just send them to me. I'll have Khloe do it. And I said, tell Khloe to go to hell.
To tell us to be quiet and not and let Lamar get tarnished, to let our reputation get tarnished, we absolutely will not do.
So my next question is, what rights does Khloe Kardashian have in this? We're hearing they were about to go through the divorce process and finally make it official, but it hadn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So what are her rights as technically his wife in a case like this?
Well, if something bad had happened to him, and it certainly sounds like miraculously and thankfully that hasn't happened, she was really the person in control. And so she had very much rights to decide about his treatment, rights to decide what would happen to him. Now, I think all of that is out the window if he continues to recover, and it sounds like he must have had some kind of strong body to be able to make it through to this point. But when you get in this simple battle of words, I mean, you got to say it's rich. It's rich that the Kardashians are telling Dennis Hoff to be quiet.
Pun intended. It's so many different levels.
So, guys, what's also really scary about this is a man came very close to dying, and we've seen this time and time again with celebrities. We saw it with Philip Seymour Hoffman, Heath Ledger, even Michael Jackson, although those were sort of unique circumstances vis-a-vis his doctor. In some of those cases, can you just break down for us what some of the liabilities have been? Drug dealers, I think we were talking about earlier in the case of Philip Seymour Hoffman, right?
Absolutely. What you have is you have your criminal exposure ranging from the mundane, which is you bust the dealer who supplied the cocaine, to the complexity of the Conrad Murray case, which is his responsibility criminally. A homicide, the death of Michael Jackson. So it runs the gamut from a criminal exposure. Then you can get real interesting. If you really want to push the envelope, there's the issue of criminal forfeiture. Technically, if there were illegal drugs done in the ranch, an argument might be made that the ranch became an instrumentality of a crime. And if it's a drug-related crime, someone really looking to, let's just see how creative we can get, on top of the criminal exposure to the extent that the drugs may have been supplied illegally, you could have a forfeiture proceeding.
However, if everyone keeps to the same story, if everyone says, look, there is no cocaine. There are no drugs done at this property. You know, a property cannot be responsible, cannot be an insurer for the bad habits of other people that, number one, take place somewhere else. So the whole thing could easily go away.
But what if he had done cocaine at the ranch and the owners didn't know? What is the liability then?
If he does cocaine and the owners didn't know, and also that other people who worked for the owners didn't know, there is no liability.
Agreed.
I say.
Agreed. But that, you really hit on it, which is, can the irresistible force and the whatever, the movable, you know what I'm trying to say, can they get together long enough to recognize this is mutually assured destruction, certainly for Mr. Hoff? And at some level, everyone has to recognize, and maybe if for no one else, Mr. Lamar's ability to go on with his life, unless this is season 13, which, wow. Yeah. Maybe even season 23 we could continue up to. But at some level, let the man get well. Let the man deal with his demons. And should the two of them decide to get married in the hospital, maybe Mr. Hoff can officiate. Now that would be rich.
Do you think this at all changes how he operates his ranch? I mean, he's been doing this for some time now, but do you think there's a level of concern on his part, even though he is speaking publicly about how he operates and who's coming in there and how intoxicated they are?
Well, it depends on how he's operated his ranch in the past. If, in fact, he is the law-abiding person that he has said that he is, and that there are no drugs, that they would not give anyone any drugs, that they would not, in essence, serve someone who was intoxicated in a way that would make them more intoxicated, well, then I say he can operate his ranch exactly the same way. If, on the other hand, there have been shenanigans going on that are behind closed doors or in public view, either way, he has got to investigate his own ranch and make sure that things are on the up and up.
Yeah, to Randy's point, I think it's interesting. You know, this is a man who is obviously wealthy, he's famous, and he is going to come to this place and he's going to drop a lot of money. Now, you know, it doesn't have to be a brothel like this. You know, people go to bars, and if you have a couple and you have a lot of money in your pocket, you burn through that very quickly. The bartenders, unless you're really intoxicated, are going to keep serving you. Could we see something in this situation where they said, look, this guy's got a lot of money. He's here, he's spending it, he's a regular. We know he likes to drop a lot of coin in here. Let's keep it going. He looks a little, you know, but we're not doctors.
Well, it's one thing to be giving him that herbal Viagra. It's another thing to be doing lines on the bar.
And then you've got the drinking component. I mean, what we're talking about, there's a concept in the law that when an establishment, a bar, a restaurant, the ranch, when you serve a visibly intoxicated person, you could be on the hook as a result of that. Now, typically, it's more akin to hurting someone else.
Correct.
You go, you get drunk in a bar, you go out, you get into your car, and you kill someone. The bar could be on the hook. It's called dram shop liability. Here it gets very interesting because you have this possibility of the service of alcohol. Again, we have to get back to this whole herbal supplement. I mean, herbal Viagra, if it's anything like real Viagra, the list of side effects and the warnings that they show on TV run longer than the actual, this is what's really great about Viagra. So to me, you're automatically on notice that you can't go dishing these things out like Razzles or M&Ms. You've got to know who you're giving them to. And then adding to the fact that he's drinking, Lord only knows what else is going on. I think at some level there is this, do you know, or you have reason to know. So I think that will put some pressure and will cause some scrutiny. And as much as Mr. Hoff, I'm sure, is loving all of this publicity, that part of it, to the extent that the government may want to take a look at what's going on, that's probably not the publicity he had in mind.
Can a store be liable if you are a retail store where they sell some of these supplements? I did a story years ago in J School, believe it or not, on hydroxycut. A lot of people had blamed that vitamin supplement for numerous instances of kids, you know, having problems with their heart, in some cases dying, and they were blaming the company. The company is not regulated, or the vitamin supplement was not regulated by the FDA. Is there any liability at all from the makers of the drug, which has been reported is called Reload, or any of these herbal supplements?
Well, usually it goes back to the makers. The fact that someone has it legitimately on their shelves, be it a store, as you bring up in your story, or here at the ranch, it's simply a matter of what has that company, number one, put in there, and number two is what are the warnings on the label.
But it's not going to say, Rikki, don't take it with cocaine, right?
No, it is not. It is not. But ultimately, as I say, we cannot ensure the safety of everyone around us. I mean, otherwise you'd have hotels, you'd have restaurants, you'd have airports, you'd have everybody who could potentially be liable for people's bad habits.
Right. And I mean, and he has a history of, you know, having issues with drugs.
That's what I was getting at, right?
Going to, that goes to the issue of having reason to know. This is not someone where, how would I know?
Right.
That's going to be a tough one to sell.
But you're not going to be the investigator at the door.
Right.
You're not going to have your patrons come in and fill out a form of what have you done in the last 24 to 72 hours. Or as when you go to the doctor, do you have or have you ever had?
Right. And I mean,
it's just not going to happen.
Right. Because we follow the news. So who's to say that the person who did sell him this thing, or the Viagra, the synthetic Viagra, is going, oh, wait a minute, isn't he the Lamar Odom that had a drug problem?
except that Doug Hoff knows his history big time.
Could the police investigators, once Mr. Odom is clearly out of the woods, go to him and start to work him over for what happened, who sold him what was he really doing?
Oh, Randy, come on, he's your client. What are you going to tell him to do?
I'm your client. I'm Lamar Odom, Randy. I come.
Well, obviously, the first conversation is going to be between my client and me. And then depending on what I hear, that will be how long I decide to push them off because of his condition. Now, he's not necessarily going to be under any obligation to speak to anyone for any reason at any time. So it may very well be that the advice is you keep your mouth shut, and that's the end of it. And if a subpoena should come down the road, whether it be a grand jury subpoena or otherwise, we'll deal with it when we have to deal with it. It all depends on, really, again, we have this whole notion of the Kardashians in the show,
right,
and this one and that one. That's not necessarily good for TV, and from what we can see here, the participants don't necessarily really care about what's in their best legal interest as much as what's going to be the best for ratings. So from a rating standpoint, he will speak, but from a legal standpoint, if I were representing him, I would probably advise him, do not speak to anyone. Thank God that you're alive. Go enjoy your kids. If you want to reconcile with Khloe, go knock yourself out. Go live your life. And for God's sakes, man, get yourself some help.
But if a prosecutor, if Lamar Odom is free and clear, does the prosecutor go, you know, I really want to pursue this, and thus there's a grand jury that's convened, or is it like, look, he's fine,
right,
we're moving on, no harm, no foul?
It all depends on the prosecutor's attitude about this place.
The Love Ranch.
Yes, and the prosecutor's attitude about Mr. Hoff. If the prosecutor really could care less about the place, or could care less about Mr. Hoff, other than his being, according to the Kardashians, a publicity seeker, but according even to himself, trying to defend his legitimate business in Nevada, the prosecutor may just say, let's move on. On the other hand...
What do you think will happen? Do you think the prosecutor will say, let's move on? Do you think they'll see this as a case that would be wasting tax dollars, if you will, trying to go after this Love Ranch?
I think that they have to do an investigation. They may move on after that, but they can't just walk away.
I think, to Ricky's point, they will do a cursory investigation. They will hope that no one says something stupid, because to me the two things that will drive an investigation is who's the first one to say something stupid. Is Mr. Hoff going to say something stupid to draw scrutiny?
Right.
Are the Kardashians going to say something stupid? Is someone going to be really stupid and say, why haven't the police done anything here?
And in that
They've dropped the ball, and then you will say...
And then you're stuck.
then you're
in that early stage investigation, what would they be looking for? They would go to the ranch, question the employees, question
Correct.
Mr. Hoff.
And, of course, they're going to look at the toxicology tests, which are really the most significant factors here.
And there is no Fifth Amendment privilege when it comes to what's in your body. So you can't, if there's something in your system that doesn't belong there, you have no constitutional right to say that's going to incriminate me, so you can't know that. Because blood, for example, bodily fluids are not testimonial.
So they get the toxicology results even if they don't get Lamar Odom's testimony.
Okay.
Well, the good news is Mr. Odom, according to members of his family, is so far doing a lot better than he was 24 hours ago. So that is some good news. Rikki Klieman, Randy Zelin, thank you both so much. That was a fascinating discussion.